Today we're going to show you how to properly take a spore print so you can keep those genetics to use for later, or if your goal is to build a visual library. You're going to need 70% isopropyl alcohol, aluminium foil, a scalpel, a bowl, a pair of scissors, a paper towel, some mushrooms, a pair of gloves, and a Ziploc bag. We're going to be working with portobello mushrooms today to show you how to do this. First off, unroll the foil. One thing to note in this step, we are using aluminium foil to do our print on. Some people like to use wax paper, however, we don't recommend this. The reason being is that it's harder to clean with isopropyl alcohol, being that it gets too wet, and the same happens when we do a spore print. If you do, however, choose to use wax paper, make sure not to spray it with isopropyl alcohol. Do the spore print as is. It should be fairly clean as it's undergone industrial processing. Put the bowl on top of the foil so you can measure it out. Then we're going to cut the foil so that it's slightly bigger than the bowl. Then we're going to sanitize everything. So we want to spray our hands, give them a wipe, spray a paper towel, give our workspace a spray, wipe it down, spray the foil on both sides, and then give it a wipe. You can use either side of the foil for this. Spray our bowl and give that a wipe too. Spray the scalpel and give it a wipe. If we're taking a spore print for looks, we want to avoid a mushroom like this that obstructs the gills. We want to use a mushroom like this that exposes most of the gills, so we get a more complete spore print. We're going to cut the stipe so it doesn't touch the foil. If we don't do this, we could leave mushroom matter on the foil, which could contaminate. We're going to fold the sides of the foil so that it's easier to pick up later on. We're going to put the mushroom on the foil and put the bowl over the top. This is going to eliminate any air interference, which is going to prevent contamination. It's also going to keep our mushroom humid, which will stop it from drying up, resulting in a lack of spore deposit. We're going to give it anywhere from 12 to 15 hours, allowing it to drop a significant amount of spores. We're also going to be doing a spore print in our glass booklet. Doing a spore print in a glass booklet will allow you to keep a collection of spore prints that you can come back and look at. It's also completely airtight, allowing you to keep it forever. To start off with, we're going to sanitize it with isopropyl alcohol and give it a wipe. We're going to need to use a smaller mushroom for this one. Then we're going to cut the stipe and put it on the booklet. Then we're going to cover it with a bowl and leave it anywhere from 12 to 15 hours. We're going to give our hands a spray so that we can sanitize it for the next step. We've left our mushroom on the foil now for 15 hours, so we're going to take it off. And this is what our spore print looks like. You'll notice that it's gathered some moisture while it's been resting. This is completely normal. Anywhere above 15 hours and it's going to gather too much moisture, which will affect the look of the spore print. If looks aren't what you're going for, then feel free to leave it for longer to let it drop more spores. This next step is very crucial. We need to get rid of the moisture before we're able to store our spore print. If we don't, then the spores may germinate in the foil. To do this, we're going to put a bowl over the top of it and leave it anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. The amount of time will vary depending on how much moisture is on the foil and the temperature of the room. So have a look at it and leave it for as long as it needs to dry. Our mushroom on the glass booklet has also been resting for 15 hours. So we're going to take a look and see what spore print's been left behind. As you can see, we also have a bit of moisture on our booklet. So we're going to put the bowl back over it and leave it to dry for 24 to 48 hours. And again, we're going to sanitize our hands. We've left our spore print on the foil for 48 hours to dry. Now it's time to have a look at it. And this is what it looks like. You'll notice there's no more moisture on the foil, so now it's time to get it ready to store. We're going to fold it in half and then fold it in half again. Then we're going to sanitize the Ziploc bag with isopropyl alcohol to get ready to put the foil in. Make sure to leave it for a couple of minutes to evaporate before you put the foil in the bag. Now we're going to close the bag and label it. We need to put the date, the species, and where we found the mushroom. This is really important because if we found it in the wild, then we need to know that there may be contamination. If we grew it indoors, then we know there's a lot less chance of contamination when we go to grow it on agar. As long as we store the spores correctly, we can keep the genetics indefinitely. So that means in the future, if you ever want to come back and grow them, you can. We need to keep them in a cool, dark, and dry place. So we can store it inside of a book like this, or a wooden box like this. We can even store it in a drawer. Now that the glass slide has been drying for 72 hours, it's time to have a look at it. As you can see, all the moisture is dry, so now we can get it ready to store. I'm going to close the glass slide. I'm being very careful at this point not to smudge the spore print. I'm going to seal it with some tape to make sure it stays shut. I'm measuring out each side, placing the slide on top of the tape and folding it over. Then I'm going to neaten up the edges. And this is what it looks like. Completely sealed from the outside environment, there's no air inside or moisture, so we can keep the genetics forever. We can also keep it on display and look at it whenever we want. Again, we're going to put the species of the mushroom, the date that we did the spore print, and where we found it. So later on, if we decide to grow it on agar, we know if we need to account for potential contamination. Again, we want to store this in a cool, dark, and dry place. We can store this in a box or in a drawer. Spores that are older than 5 years need to be rehydrated before you put it on agar. If you want to learn all about putting these onto agar and creating your own sterile spore syringe, watch our next skills video.